I know we've got, oh, Ms. Taylor, yes.
I just wanted to answer Councilman Peterson's question because some of us citizens in the community have been working with Utah Open Lands for the last 3 years on this. We had a committee with some of the Heber City Council people and the Wasatch County Council people 3 years ago, and then the citizens worked with Wendy Fisher at Utah Open Lands. And so, you know, we have been working hard on this for the last 3 years. And we have all the different pieces coming together on this equation. The only missing piece of this equation that we don't have is the publicly funded seed money from the county or municipality or wherever it's coming from, so that we can apply for these grants. So I'm just letting you know that yes, we have all these ducks in a row except for the seed money that this bond would accomplish.
I appreciate that and all the hard work that you put into it. The point that Justin brings up is there's other ways to do it as well with private money that somebody has, like in Park City, they just said, hey, I've got $10 million, here you go. Or landowners that just want to do it on their own. There's been property owners that have just given it up so they can just keep it in open space. What we're doing is we're just talking about creating a bond and taxing everybody in the county to do it. But there's other options, as you mentioned, like 4 options. They'll all either be...
Well, and this money is just seed money for the grants. We have private donors that are willing to come forward, but they're not going to come forward until they see the citizens of Wasatch County say that this is important to them too. So we are using all those options, but this is the one portion of that equation that we haven't been able to do yet, is the bond money from the public.
Thank you.
And just to respond quickly, since it's, I agree with Tracy, and frankly, all those other pieces don't work as well unless this piece is there, right? That this is a component. There are funds like
Kim Danley?
Yeah.
Kim expressed. You know, there are funds that are not accessible unless there's some participation on our part. And I think what we're looking to do here is just accelerate. We're going to accelerate the process. It's not, but you got to think too. Just because we authorize the first $5 million, I mean, I don't think we're even, you know, we're not going to pull the full amount. We're not going to pull it until we use it. Right? And if we don't like, if this council doesn't like the project that's presented and doesn't think it's a good use of the taxpayer money, because that's, you know, you are the guardians of that, you don't have to spend it. But if you think it is, then you can. And that's the point at which it's spent, right? But until then, no harm, no foul.
Right.
Right?
I don't understand how all that
Well, if
works.
it's collected, it's gone from the taxpayer.
Well, we're talking about a bond, right? We're talking about a bond. So the only thing the taxpayer would pay would be the bond back, right? So we're not, this isn't like a normal tax. We're not pulling from their pocket. We're borrowing money they would have to pay back. So until we spend it, they're not paying back.
So I understand how that works and you know, how it flows and how it will help, but I'm just curious, you know, you do need to take the temperature of those property owners in the North Fields to make sure that they're going to do this. You know, it doesn't sound like too many people have done that.
That's what I just said. We've done.
Back to the council and get some discussion and possible action. Yes, Mrs. Danley.
Okay, sorry, I'll stand just so my voice hears. The one other thing I think you need to consider when you're talking about this being a tax burden on citizens is the fact that when we fully develop land, whatever the zoning in it is, whether it's 20-acre zoning or whether it's 1-acre zoning, there's community services that I'm sure you're very well aware when that's roads, schools, and what they've done studies nationally, and I know there's some people that want to look at Wasatch County as a case study and do a study here to find out how our valley would look and what the tax burden would be if it was developed based on our current zoning. But there's also a tax burden that's higher than if open space is preserved, just on the cost of community services and us having to build more schools and spend more money on police, fire, and roads. So that's another thing to consider, and I don't have those numbers. I mean, I know they've done those in other places and they found that if you put money towards open space and preserve it in perpetuity,
Justin,
you
on
actually
that.
save tax money in the long haul. And then the other, I just want to say one other thing, and then I promise I'll be quiet. Well, I can't promise. It's just that right now, landowners, they don't have an option to preserve their land. If I grew up in this valley, I'm not a farmer. I wish I was, but I'm not. But if I have 100 acres and I need to liquidate that asset for medical reasons or because my parents passed away and we're trying to divide it among siblings or something, the only option that's out there is to sell it to someone that wants to develop the land, whether I want to see that happen to my farmland or not. If we provide local money and give the Open Space Committee a chance to leverage that money with other resources that are available, it gives private landowners an option. Right now, they don't have an option in this community, in this valley, unless they just choose to donate it. And a lot of people don't have they're not independently wealthy enough that they can just donate that kind of asset. So,
Thank you. Mr. Kenner.
The elephant in the room is you. With respect to the North Fields, you don't have to rezone that land. So you have leverage for the property owner to say, look, you really don't have the option to develop. You have the option to sell it, say, to Mr. McPhee and me, we'll buy it, but we can't do anything with it except graze cattle and horses on it. So let's not lose sight of the fact that the property owner doesn't have the option to develop it without you rezoning it. And, you know, the public already registered its approval of that once before. So you start with the premise that this property is not going to be rezoned. You can sell it to somebody else for its current use, its current zoning. Or you can negotiate a deal with all of these tax advantages, etc. And right now, those are the only two options on the table, unless you decide to change the zoning.
Say $15 million if we don't rezone.
What?
We save $15 million if we don't rezone.
Potentially. Yes, Mrs. Franco, and then we'll come back to Mike, and then I'd like to get the council's
Thank you.
input on this.
I'll be short. I just want to address what Councilmember Peterson said. He's saying, why haven't we used these other options yet? Right? Because we didn't have an open lands board yet that could go to the property owners and say, hey, here's your options. We didn't have that. And please remember, I stood here before for a few times in a few years and said, please set up the open lands board. And now you have it. Now we have it, right? So we can start approaching property owners, just like Tracy has been doing informally, right? We can do it formally now. But here's the second part of your piece. For the 10 years that Steve and I and others have been working on this, every single time we talk to Utah Open Lands, they say, until your valley makes a commitment, we're probably not going to do a lot of work there. They'll try. They're trying to do it privately, but the funding isn't there because they can't get the matching grants themselves, right? Because we have to do our part first. And so as now that we're finally here as a board, and we're finally coming to you and saying, hey, we're trying to put all these pieces together, that's the big piece, this bond. And again, it's not something that you have to decide. It's what the voters need to decide. But finally, as a board, we can go out and say, look, here's the advantages, here's the disadvantages. We are going to try to do as much as we can with or without money.
Okay.
But all the other organizations say, until you get that piece with the bond, there's not a lot that they can do to help us or help the landowners.
Perfect. I appreciate you explaining that, because it was just a question that I had. To explain that. Tracy, thank you for explaining it as well.
Mr. Davis.
I'm unclear on the potential tax for.
Yeah, me too. It's
As to
15
what
and
it
it's
is.
5, and I'm not sure what we're asking.
Could I put it on the board? Can we explain that? Because I'd like to understand.
But we don't really have to collect it.
I'm a lawyer, not an accountant. My numbers are off. The accountant can correct me.
I understand bonding.
So we're asking for $15 million total, right? But we're asking for the $15 million in three $5 million increments.
Let's just do the 5. That way we can time it by 3. I think most of us can do that. So what's the tax burden?
So on the initiative, we're asking county taxpayers to pay $5 million in additional taxes, in addition to whatever other things, we've got sheriff and school resource.
I just want to know what the amount is. What's the amount?
Yeah.
$9 per 100,000 assessed value.
Is what,
$9 per 100,000.
So is that,
per year?
so is that primary
That's
residence
for
or
1
second
million,
home?
Steve.
No, it don't matter what.
Well, that's for 1
That's for
million.
1 million.
So for 5 million, it'd be $45 per 100,000.
For five,
Primary home.
It doesn't matter because primary secondary home would be more than 100. The value would be higher.
So an average house in Wasatch County is $380,000.
round it up to 4.
I don't know, that's what Brent gave me.
That's gotta be taxable value.
No, it can't be taxable value.
That was the average value of the home last year with the
Wasatch County.
in Wasatch
So
County.
the taxable value would be 55% of that? Is that right, Brent?
Yes,
Okay.
For a primary residence.
yes, for primary residence.
So the taxable value on that would be 209,000 at 55%.
So just saying it's 200,000, but that makes it really easy.
Yeah.
So
That's $90.
that's $90.
$94.
He
I mean, we gotta be accurate.
wants to stick that to 209.
Per year for a third.
I'm gonna apply that one.
Average value. Then if you go to the 15, you take 3 times that.
No,
One, we get to be honest.
192.
282,000. $282. Did I multiply right?
Okay, so right now, the taxable value for a primary residence on that is $328 for the county general fund. You're almost doubling a resident's taxes to the
County
general
taxes.
fund
Yeah,
to pay for that
that's what I was
$15 million.
getting at earlier.
That's a lot of money.
What did the general,
Up to 15 million.
what did our taxable value
Doubling
increase,
the taxes.
increase last year though?
What's that?
What did our taxable value increase last year?
I don't know that number.
Well, this is gonna go down, but this is today's dollar.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna go up, our taxable value is gonna go up every year.
All right, let's,
That's the
So you
total
got-
over 20 years, Mike? Or is that?
What's that?
That's the total over 20 years?
Per year.
Per year?
Per year.
so let's think, I want to bring this back to the council now. Thanks to everybody for your comments. I know it wasn't a public hearing, but we certainly want to be respectful and mindful of everybody that's put time and effort into this. For me, as was mentioned, the guardian of tax dollars and different things, that's quite a bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about what we think we're going to see. We know we need resource officers for the county sheriff's department. We talked about our fire and EMS issues. We've talked about some other priorities that we have on the list as well, all looking at in 2018. And this is what we're deciding today, is whether we vote to put this on the ballot to let the people decide. That's a lot of tax dollars. We're talking about a couple $100,000 here and there for the school resources. What did we decide that was?
700,000.
700,000 for school resource officers. We have to come up with that somewhere. Let's open it up to council for some comments, questions,
I
concerns.
think the question there is, we don't have a choice on the 700,000. But we put this on the ballot. People that's gonna have to pay this is the one that's gonna vote and say yes or no.
But they certainly need to know that they're also going up 700 and something thousand this year already.
And we need to advertise,
Regardless.
we need to advertise that before the vote. And that's improvement we got to do before we put this on the ballot. We gotta have that argument all spelled out.
But I think for me, it's important to make this decision based on some of those other factors too. There's a lot for us to consider as the guardians of the tax dollar. Now, if several thousand citizens came together and put it on the ballot, then it might be a little more feasible for me to say, hey, you know what? I mean, we made this mistake before by putting something on the ballot that we shouldn't have as a council. I don't know, that's a lot of money. That's double the tax. Yeah, please.
I think that there are very few people in very few voters in the county that understand this issue. I don't think most of the people in this room, including me, understand the ramifications of this, how the process is going to work, how it's going to be used. I think that in order, if this did get on the ballot, and I applaud the effort. I think the effort is great, and I think we should pursue this. But I think that there will be opposing voices. There will be lots of noise made, and for this to have any chance of succeeding, there are a bunch of questions and a bunch of communication that will have to happen for one change. And I don't think to this point there isn't very much time to get that done. There's very little time, and there will have to be a very serious effort, or it'll all be for naught.
Why don't we just come down the road? Mr. Good, any thoughts?
Well, so Steve, did you have any dispute on the map that they did there? Is it 280?
That's only an estimate.
Okay.
Because a lot of it would depend on the interest rate of the bond and the timing. I don't think we'll ever see the full 15 million used. I think there'll be enough grant money coming in and other options. And you're not ever going to buy all the North Fields, but you can buy some key parcels to keep the rural character of the valley going.
But is that a good estimate of what it would cost the average taxpayer per year to pay the
That's what we have.
Is that accurate? And then for anybody on the board, but you're a representative. Spencer, were you on the board too? The Open Lands Board? What was the discussion about why this year as opposed to next year?
Just the timing of it, because, I mean, you look at bonds, we could be building high schools.
Well, and interest rates. Interest rates are slowly starting to creep.
Okay. You have an election this year too. So next year's cost is another election.
I'm sorry, can I make a
Oh, absolutely. No, it's fine.
I think that there have been some comments today too that have just talked about the North Fields, and this is definitely not just about the North Fields. There's property all around Wasatch County, and that priority list will be really interesting when it gets to that point. And it's definitely not about the North Fields, just about
Yeah, it could certainly be about it, but there are other places. Yes. Anything further, Mr. Good?
I think you're talking about the aquatic center, about an item that the council put on the ballot. And then remember that item failed, but then it came back in a different form. And it cost a lot more and we got a lot less. And so I think it's important to learn both sides of that lesson.
Sure.
And I think the big part of what Mark has talked about is that it requires a lot of education. And if the council puts it on, then potentially we're responsible for educating the public.
In a sense, sponsoring it.
Right, and if the citizens put it on, or the citizen initiative put it on, then they have the impetus to push the education. I mean, what do you think, Steve?
So those are the two ways it can go on the ballot. It would be either a citizens initiative or a vote of this body.
But I think if it went on under the Wasatch County Open Lands Board, we'd have a more control on how that education is done and more exact.
But the Wasatch Open Lands Board can't vote to put it on the ballot.
No, we did. You control the Wasatch Open Lands Board, so
The council.
Yeah, the council. So you still have a say. A citizen group put it on, you would have no say.
See, what happened with the aquatic center, just in my opinion, is that the council put it on the ballot, but then the council wasn't really part of the public relations effort, if you want to put it that way, if that's the right term.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because not all the council was behind.
Right.
And I think that you could have the same issue here.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point. That's all I have right now.
Mr. Curry.
I appreciate the work of the Wasatch Open Lands Board. I have nothing for or against whatever the proposal, what they're looking at. I think it's a good plan to look at, perhaps take advantage of as we move forward. For me, and it's been stated, for me, the bottom line is, it was the last sentence on the last slide you put up, is let the voters decide. And I don't think the county council has a responsibility to put this on. I will be voting against the resolution to put it on. I think that it needs to go on the ballot. It should be put on by the public, by those people who are pushing it and supporting it, and then let them. So that's how I will be voting.
Mr. Farrell?
Well, you just going up both and I'm going to go the other way.
Cancel each
But
other
I'm
out.
in favor of putting this on because I think the voters in Wasatch County, they've done surveys, they want open space. Let them vote and put on the line to pay for it. We talk about keeping Wasatch County's rural character, but we have never done anything to do that. I think this is a good opportunity for the council to show that they're in support of maintaining the agricultural heritage of this valley. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done with this. It's not going to be done overnight, but we're running out of time trying to drag the feet. And then the council decided not to put it on. Then the citizens won't have a chance to put it on the ballot because they don't have enough time for this.
Right, when would the signatures have to be in?
The signatures, it's 45 days after the petition is or the sponsors give it to me.
So would that be a similar
Hold-
situation to what happened, hold on, would that be a similar situation, Brent, than what happened with Heber City when there was a petition drive to put the police or public safety building on?
No.
And then it made it on the ballot anyways, even though they didn't need the signatures?
No.
You don't think we're in that kind of?
Can I answer that question, please? Initiative petition is 316 days or April 15th. The referendum petition is 45 days.
Okay.
So it's already, April 15th is not going to be able to be done this year. So if any initiative petition is done, it would have to go on the 2019 ballot.
You would have to call a special elections.
Just so you know, this grant money, like if we wanted to take advantage of this federal grants, it takes a bit of time. Like the next deadline is January of 2019. So you're talking, if the council doesn't vote to put this on, you're talking another 2 years before you can even access any federal money.
Mr. Peters?
Yeah, I agree as well, and I thank everyone that's been involved with this and all the hard work. I am all for open space. Our county has about 80% open space as it is right now. We have great places where we can go recreate and everything. Yes, there are some areas that we want to identify and preserve if at all possible. I think we should go with zoning, keep that intact. I know where our open space is. Now, I did the development years ago. It was a 100-acre development, and 50 acres was donated to open space. 40 acres remain in open space. Loren Provokes was there 20 years ago when we worked through that. So I'm all for open space, and I like to see it preserved. However, Mr. Chairman made a good point. $15 million, along with our county manager, is a lot of money. And what are our priorities? Is it number one, open space that we spend $15 million on? Is it law enforcement that needs a little assistance? So I think what we ought to do is identify our priorities and see if that is our number one priority to spend $15 million on. And encourage that the zoning doesn't change, and that can save us a lot of money there. Other thing is, I don't think it's really a government's job to get involved this way. We've seen in the past, putting some things on there as a council, it hasn't worked out too well. I voted against those when they were put on there, and I'm going to vote against this one as well. I do think it's the citizens' responsibility to do it, and if they really have a strong desire to do that, to get together and to have it all come together. So those are my feelings.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Park?
I like having the last say, by the way. You can start down there in the future. That would
We
be
always
awesome.
start down here, so he gets the last word.
I think this comes down to it. We are not voting tonight whether or not to raise taxes or not. The citizens, by the time this comes to the ballot, if it does, will know about the different amounts that may be possible for our taxes. And I am a taxpayer that, as a citizen, has generally voted against tax increases. But I think this is an important issue, and I feel to not vote to give the citizens the choice shows that I don't trust the same citizens that probably put me here. So I am voting yes tonight, but it is to make sure that we just give them our trust.
Okay. Anybody else?
Now, we don't have to, we talk about the 15 million. We don't have to do the full 15 million. If we find, when it comes time to put on the ballot, that 15 million would be a hardship, we can go with a lesser number. When we know what's going to come out. And have a better idea what the county budget's going to be like.
Anything further? More discussion? Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve, is this resolution? Resolution 2018, do we have a number on this one, Scott?
It's 1805.
2018-05 as presented.
I'll second that motion.
A motion by Mr. Good, second by Mr. Farrell. Any further discussion on the motion? Everybody understands what we're voting on? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. No?
No.
I'll make a comment before I vote. This is something that I know Councilmember Farrell's been working on for at least all the years that you've been on council, 12, 14, whatever it is. And then after a while, you almost kind of gave up on it happening. And then I pushed this on the agenda with, well, ever since I've been on, kind of pulled you along with it. And so I'm not going to leave you standing at this point. One of the comments that Councilman Peterson made was talking about priorities, and I think a few of you have talked about priorities. We know that we need more money in our fire. We know that we need more money in our sheriff's office. We know we need more in EMS. But I don't think that it's a zero-sum game. And I'll quote something, which was Winston Churchill in the Second World War, when they came to him and said, why are we spending all this money on art and music and all of these non-essential things? And Winston Churchill said, what are we fighting for? And so preservation of this valley, the integrity of it, I think is important. I'm voting yes.
Okay, Mr.
Yes.
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 Okay, motion carries 4-3. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, guys.